Welcome back to another episode of Solving the Money Problem, where we find somebody who has entered the infinite banking concepts journey and has solved a problem. But today we're not going to just talk about one problem. We're going to go through 5 different problems that this person had. And this person happens to be Mr. Jason Sipple. And we're going to talk first about his debt problem. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Chris. Excited to be here, Mr. Naugle, since you just called me Mr. Sipple. So let's have some fun, man.
All right. Well, so you got into the infinite banking concept primarily because you were in debt and you were giving all your money away to somebody else's bank. But where did the epiphany come from when you first heard about the infinite banking concept, and what made you take that first step?
Whew, that's a big question. I'll try to keep this tight for you. I could go all the way back to 6 years old, but at some point I inherited a pattern that told me money was scary and entrepreneurship was not for me because it meant that people wouldn't pay me. I picked it up at 6 years old. I didn't realize it. So I did what most people do, right? Most people listening, you do what our parents taught us. We show up first, we leave last, we work hard, we're humble, we add value, and we just do our job. We leave, we expect to get paid. So I was trading time for money for 46 plus years, Chris. And I realized standing in the back of a mastermind where I was one of the leaders and someone was leading, the leader was leading the future self exercise. How much money do you want to have? Who do you want to be when you have your dream? Where do you want to live? Who's around you? Who did you become? And while everyone's getting pumped up, Chris, I started crying. I broke down and tears just started running down my face. And I remember looking over to the left. And my friend Andres saw me and he walked up and he put his hands on my shoulder and he's like, "Man, it's going to be okay." But I knew it wasn't okay. Like I knew at that point that I was living someone else's dream again. I was away from my family. I was working away from my family, working 15 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, thinking that I was building something to free people, to help them be their best selves. And I realized I just traded one ladder of corporate America for another ladder to helping someone else.
Well,
And so
I'm sure there's a lot of people that are in that same boat. You know, they're making great money, they're working a lot of hours, they feel like they're climbing that corporate ladder, but yet the debt just seems to be climbing right there with them. And it sounds a lot like where you had this epiphany moment where everybody's getting rah-rahed up and you're thinking, I haven't made it, and primarily because of debts. Am I right to think that?
it was primarily I couldn't work any harder. I mean, 15, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's a lot of entrepreneurs are doing those kind of hours, right? And so here I am thinking I'm doing what needs to be done. Like Tony Robbins says, burn the boats. I had burned the boat. I had walked away from over $200,000 a year in income. Got both kids in private schools because, Florida public education, not the best, not the best. So we want to make sure they're getting good education because that's really important to my wife, Patty, and I. And it was just, I was just doing what I knew. And I had this pattern that I didn't see. And I was like, I can't work any harder. We don't have an extravagant life. We're not doing crazy things. But no matter what, when you save that 3 to 6 months up, that what if fund or rainy day fund or whatever you want to call it, every time we'd save up, we'd end up something would happen, an air conditioner in a new home would go, a transmission on a truck would go, and all of a sudden that would be completely depleted. And the things you needed, you end up going back to credit cards. So I was always having debt go out the door, and I was out of debt 3 times in my adult life. So by the time I got to 46, I was like, there's got to be a better way. And I
Yeah,
needed,
there's that guy Murphy that you just described. You know, we all know Murphy.
yeah,
Murphy's Law. Somebody should literally find him in some dark alley and just sucker punch him, because that's always the case. You're getting ahead, and then all of a sudden something happens. It brings you right back down to your needs. And it's all that Murphy's guy's fault. But keep going with the story. So, like, you're in this situation. How did you find, like, where was the first step? Like, how did you find your way out of it?
well, I came home and I'm a disciplined individual, right? Like I knew I had discipline. I'm up before everyone almost every day, working out, taking care of my body. So I had a physical discipline. I had a discipline about how to, raise my boys, how to be a good husband, how to be a good employee. But I had always avoided money my whole life. Like if you were trying to talk to me money back then, Chris, I would have just been like, can we talk about cars, which you love? Can we talk about sports? Can we talk about snowboarding? I would have Girls, anything. I would have done anything to change the conversation because I didn't realize how bad my money wounds were. And it took someone to point that out to me that it was never going to go forward unless I started being okay and understanding money was nothing more than a tool. Money didn't have energy. It just amplified whoever you were, which made me feel a hell of a lot better because I'm like, all right, I know I'm good. Like I know I can go help people. And I ended up finally getting humble enough to ask someone, a close friend of mine who's a fiduciary with 40 wealth management offices who actually practices this and learned from Nelson. I asked him for help. And that's kind of where it began.
So what was step one? I think a lot of people listening, they resonate with your story. They're like, that's me. That's where I'm at. I'm working my tail off. I just can't seem to get ahead. So what did this Jason guy do? And give me the steps. So just take them through the different steps. You met somebody. So the first thing you met, a coach, a mentor. I always like to call that person your unconditional one who had the knowledge, knew how to help you, but was able to and willing to share that with you.
Yeah, that was the thing that was different. Everyone else I had talked to that worked for any financial brokerages, Schwab guy, whoever, every time you went in, they'd always ask you the same stupid questions, right? They'd always ask you like, "Hey, I see you're putting your max into your qualified plan. Good job." I was like, "Yeah, cool. Okay, I'm in my 30s, 34 years old. I want to retire at 55. Well, how do you feel about taking on more risk?" I'm like, I won't even bet a dollar on my favorite sports team. What the hell do you mean? Right? And then the second question was always, well, how do you feel about working to 72? I'm like, wait a minute. I said 54. You said 72. Like, are you not listening to me? Right? And so this guy was the first person that ever, because we took the max you could take out of your qualified plan during COVID to make that bridge between that $200,000 income and basically going backwards to zero and betting it all on myself. So we took that 100,000 out without the penalty. So he guided me through that. He guided me. He was just someone I could talk to about money that didn't make me feel stupid. He would just tell me what it was, listen to me, and try to help me solve whatever I was trying to solve.
Okay, so COVID was a unique kind of almost one-off scenario. So it's going to be hard for people to relate because you were able to take that 100,000 out of your 401k without any penalties. So that was kind of a gift of COVID, if you will. That's about the only gift that came out of that. And then, but in today's world, people could use their 401ks. They'd have to use it as a loan because if they take a withdrawal, they got a penalty. So you kind of had a one-off scenario that enabled you to pull that money out of your retirement account without the penalties. And how did you use that money? Like, so you had 100 grand that you took from your 401k. What
Yep.
did you do with that 100 grand?
Some of it was just a bridge. I was out figuring out hustling, earning. I helped sell high tickets for a dentist that I'm friends with for his mastermind, and also was in that mastermind I just mentioned that helped. I was a coach there. So we used it as the bridge just to cover the basics, and we had it as our rainy day fund just in case, right? It ended up being part of this equation later, and we can get into that. But you're asking,
You didn't use the 100,000 to pay off the debts that were keeping you buried.
no,
Okay.
no, did
So,
not. I did not use the 100K to pay
so
off
it
the
was
debt.
really just money to live on.
It was money to live on. It was the first time I took my family skiing in 2021. We did Christmas in Park City because they had never seen the snow and we all wanted to do it. And I felt like during COVID, we needed something. I mean, we're in Florida, so it was free. We could do whatever we want. We're in the best country in the world. But I just decided like, hey, they need something else. We need to do something together. We need to have some experiences through this time that remind us that we're super blessed and life is good. So.
Okay. But that didn't get you out of your mess.
No, I was still in the same mess. It took me to after I broke down, after I cried, after Andres put his hands on my shoulders and told me it was going to be okay, and I didn't really believe him, to being with my mentor. He's a close friend of mine, other than being my mentor. And I just asked him, I'm like, Rep, I need a financial philosophy. And he walked over to his coffee table, grabbed his beat up copy of the book we all know, right? The Becoming Your Own Banker, the fifth edition with the safe on the front of it, and he handed it to me. And that's all he said. He told me to read it. I went home, I read it. I got super pissed off. Super pissed off. Thank God I finished it like 1:30 in the morning. Otherwise, I would have called him up and cussed him out. I read it because I thought it couldn't be true. I really thought it couldn't be true. I'm like, it can't be this easy. You can't learn the rules of the game and then see the human nature. That's what I saw immediately. Like, this is why most people are stuck because of our human nature and the short-term thinking that we live in, the system we live in. And here's the answer. This is how money really works. And I had never even thought I could understand that. I'll pause there for a second because that's important. I always thought money wasn't for me. I always thought that I wasn't smart enough to understand it, even though I did calculus as a senior in high school. So I was always a great student. I just thought it was too complicated, too scary, and I didn't understand it because everyone uses big jargon, big words. It makes it seem like it's over there and they have to be the ones telling you how to do with your money because you're not smart enough.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of there's I mean, whether it's scripture, Earl Nightingale, any of the greats, they all say that, if you believe something, then that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to be to be. And, just like you were saying, you were in your mind, you weren't good at money. You didn't understand money. So because you thought that, that's exactly what happened. But again, where I'm trying to get to is where was that switch? So you had the mentor, you read Becoming Your Own Banker, you had negative thoughts about the book because you're like, this can't be real. This sounds too good to be true. This is a scam. But like something happened because you did climb out of that mess. So let's get right into like you read the book, you
Yep.
wanted to call and bitch them out, but you
Yep.
didn't. Like,
Well, I
where
did the
did
next
you
day.
come
Don't
to,
worry.
yeah, where did you come to grips with the fact that, okay, maybe there is something that I need to learn in this book?
Well, when I read the book the next day to make sure I understood it before I did call and cuss him out, because I called him out. Can I cuss on this? Because I was like, Rep, what the f brother? Like, why didn't you tell me about this? And he laughed. He's got this raspy laugh. He laughed at me and just like no bad energy. And he waited a second and he just goes, Sip, brother, you weren't ready. And that was profound because that's where most people are if they don't understand they have a problem or they don't understand they have a problem. And so at that point, it took a couple months to sink in further. And then I just kept asking him questions. I was like, what do I need to do if this is the thing I want to do for my family and I want to help everybody do this? Like I said, I believed every American should be doing this as soon as I read that book. And then when he told me I had to be a life insurance agent, I was like, God damn it, punch me in the face. Seriously? I've had like 8 people ask me to do that, and they were all like the pyramid scheme. Like I didn't trust any of those mofos. And I was like, I'm not gonna do this. And then he's like, I'm like, okay, what license do I need to get? And I got licensed. What do life, health, and annuities in Florida? Well, what's next? And then I just started jumping on some of the calls because he does everything. He manages $500 million. Like I said, they got 40 wealth management offices. He started his first policy in 2007 to compare it to a Roth because he didn't believe it would work either, like from learning from Nelson. So anyhow, that's where I started was this is too good to be true. What do I do to do this myself? And this isn't going to be everyone's path, but that was mine. It was like, okay, I feel like I looked into that dark cave that I was afraid of my whole life. This isn't scary. If I can get this, I can help all the other men and families like me who have that same pattern of being stuck in a system that doesn't support us.
Okay. So you ended up starting a policy at that point?
No, I didn't start a policy. I was dead broke, remember?
No,
So
that's
yeah,
why I asked because I was going
yeah,
to
yeah.
sit
I
there and
didn't
say,
start. No,
how did you afford to save money in the policy if you just said you were dead broke? You took money from the 401k just to live, which was
Yep,
just like a bridge. So like,
yep.
how did you connect? And now I feel like, you got your license, you're barely hanging on financially. So like, there's something that had to have happened here to put income in your pocket or something. I don't know what happened.
Well,
Because the
the
people
first thing.
listening to this are just like, I need to know how to get out of the situation that Jason was in, but they're not picking up on that yet.
Yeah, it took me two plus years to get to the point where I started my first policy, or 18 months from learning about the concept. So there was a lot of soul searching, figuring stuff out. But the first practical thing I can say is I weighed in. I have this saying that you got to weigh in to wrestle, right? You can't wrestle if you don't weigh in, is actually what I say. And Patty had always done all of our bookkeeping. She had done all the bill paying, and I had no idea what was flowing in and out. Like I really didn't know. And so when I did a spreadsheet for myself, and I still have it. It's called Sipple Treasure Hunt. And I wrote down all 10 debts. It was $114,000 of bad debt. It was a little less than $3,000 a month flowing out to other families, family of Ford, family of Hyundai, family of water filtration system. And I was overpaying. I was trying to get out of debt for the third time in my adult life. I was overpaying on the majority of the high interest loans by anywhere from 500 to $1,000 a month. Like anything extra, like we were bare minimum surviving, and I was just throwing extra money at all those things trying to eliminate the debt. And that was the first epiphany is I stopped paying more on those and started redirecting that back to ourselves. So I was about $1,000 to $2,500 a month coming back to us.
It's interesting though, because I think that's what a lot of people do. They just take extra money, they work longer, they take on side hustles, and they just throw it at their debts without any formal plan, without any real thought being put to how do we pay this off the fastest way possible. And I think that's one of the biggest epiphanies I've had is, to pay debt off, you really got to focus more on the strategy and the plan of action than you do the actual action of doing it.
Again, that's perfect. That's beautiful. It is really owning the structure yourself and realizing that if it's meant to be, it's up to me. You have to take ownership. You have to look at what's happening, be willing to tell yourself the truth. And the truth is I was just making everyone else wealthy. Family of Ford, family of Hyundai, water filtration system, Macy's, because I was a director of recruitment. I gotta look good, right? So I had all these cards where I was paying interest for things that I thought I needed or whatever, like the typical path. And when I started redirecting that back, that helped us really stack up a lot of capital.
But I think a
Uh,
lot of people up to this point, like they're listening and they're thinking to themselves, so wait, did Jason just take money, put it into a specially designed whole life policy, and then all of a sudden his debt got paid off? And that would obviously be something that most people would be like, no way, that is impossible. And they'd probably be right because there's more to it. There's the process that we got
yeah.
to get into. So can you just kind of walk everybody through what you did to get out of all that debt? Because that is quite a bit of debt, $3,000 a month going to somebody else every single month, and then wondering, how do I climb out of this? Like, how do I get ahead?
Yeah.
So what did that look like?
So we talk about this a lot, Earl Nightingale, right? Solving problems. We talk about adding value, and that's one of the reasons you and I align so well, is we both believe that your income, your ability to earn is going to be equal to the problems that you solve in the world for others. It's really about doing the right thing for others. So we had that money coming back to us, 1,000, 2,000, $2,500 a month. And I just started storing it in another account, right? One of my checking accounts for my coaching company. Just started putting it there, didn't touch it. Our oldest didn't go to college. So we had the choice to either I'll just give you where the money came from, right? So I added value by getting my license, starting to help people. By the end of this period here is when we became partners about a year, 7 months into this journey of me having my license, wanting to do nothing but IBC, and started saving. Money came back about 12, 13 grand from Diego's college fund that we prepaid that we couldn't transfer to Connor because he would have had to be Doogie Howser to use it, right? So, I mean, he would have had to go to college at 14 to be able to use it. Like it was a 10-year window. And so we had that money. I had a little bit left from the qualified money, and I ended up starting the first policy after about 18 months of saving and figuring this out and changing my habits, my pattern. And I started a policy where I did 36 annual, $36,000 annual, and a $60,000 overfund because that helped me pay off 9 of the 10 debts immediately within the
Wow.
first 30 days. So that was where I started was I changed my patterns, changed my habit. I had a plan and I knew I wanted to get all 10 paid off, but I didn't want to wait any longer. And I tell a lot of people that I mentor, look, you can either capitalize over time and build it up, which probably would have been smarter because my policy would be 18 months older, right? Versus waiting that long to start the first policy, pay off 9 of the 10 debts. And Chris, actually, when I did that, I was late for the first time in my life on all 9 of those debts, and my credit score dropped 150 points when I was completely out of debt, which that scared the crap out of me, man. I was like,
Wow.
wait a minute. I went from an 800 and something to like maybe more than 150 to like a 640 or 630 or something like that.
Just because you paid all your debts off?
Yeah, because I didn't pay them on time in that month where I paid them all off in their entirety.
Wow.
And That's
That's
wild,
interesting.
right? Yeah.
The other thing too that I want to make sure that the audience gets from this is, you didn't just take the money, put it into the whole life, pay the debts off, and then you're done. You actually paid the debts off, took the payments you were paying to those debtors, and paid them that dollar amount exact. I think, and I'll have you tell it, that exact dollar amount back to your policy because your policy represented your private banking system.
Amen. It was that 20 for the nine debts I paid off, Ford, Hyundai, water filtration system, Macy's, debt consolidation. I had all the problems, man. But that 2,200 a month that left on the 1st, the 5th, the 7th, and the 13th, all of a sudden started coming back to the Sipples on the 1st or before. Man, when you start paying yourself every month, it gets really exciting.
Yeah, you're
Like
never really wanting to be late when you're paying yourself.
no, I was at times, even though Patty was still kind of managing the books. We had just started our husband-wife money meetings on December 22nd of 2022 because we both had money wounds. So that's another we'll tell that one another time. We'll stay on track here. But we had the money coming back to us in months where I helped more people, where I did better at solving their problems. I would pay myself 3,000, 3,100, 2,500, whatever I could pay us without changing our lifestyle at all, just started flowing back to us. And that kind of brought us to our second policy 6 months later,
And
right?
but that second policy was for a different need because now
It
you pretty
was.
much had all your debts, under
I still
wrap.
have one. I still have one
You had
ugly.
you had one, but I mean you had a big chunk of the debts paid off. So all that
Yeah.
extra cash flow is coming back into your family instead of leaving your family every month. And then you started looking at it saying, well, hold on, we got another big hole in our financial plan here that we need to solve, and that was Patty. You want to tell a little bit about what policy number two was?
First was stop the bleeding. So if you want to write down what the policies are, first you got to stop the bleeding. You got to stop giving all your money to everyone else, right? Second one was now that the money's flowing back to us and we were stacking up a fair bit of capital, paying ourselves every month with that 2,200 or more. And then we had one old tax bill that we hadn't paid, 26 grand. And I had the $40,000 SoFi loan for a bad investment that I made to try to bridge. And by the way, don't make investments when you need it to work out because you're desperate, because you will certainly screw that up. So that was a 13.26%, $923 a month loan to SoFi that I put a $50,000 investment into something that was pretty much a Ponzi scheme and ended up paying about 72 grand before that loan was all said and done.
Wow.
And so,
It's a
and
hard
I'm
lesson.
I'm saying all of these lessons because nothing is simple. Everything, even though it's as simple as changing one thing, it's a multifaceted outcome. So you really have to know what's most important. I had intended to start that a second policy on myself to extend my coverage because I felt pretty good about some of the dumb stuff I do, but having over $2.5 million of life insurance on my body for my family. But when I sat down and thought about it and looked at it, I said, wait a minute. Patty only has a term policy that runs out in 7 years. I'm 5 times more protected than she is. And we had that debt and that IRS, that TO Sam bill. I'm like, let's start her policy. Let's make it so we can pay those last two things off. And we also protect her equally because I'd be completely lost, Chris, if I didn't have her. So would my family.
All right. Policy number two underway. And how do you use her policy nowadays?
It is just mostly a storage facility, is mostly what it is. I'm looking to be more like you, Chris, and have more liquid. We got all of our money out working for us at the moment, and we're waiting for that capital to come back. And then our policies are going to be a storage facility because I know where I want to be at the 10-year mark. And so they're going to be a storage facility used for business, for emergencies, for things, right? Opportunity fund, urgencies and emergencies kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, and there's a right season for that and the wrong season for that. And I think you're right. This is definitely the season to be liquid, to have capital that you can deploy at any time. And I think that's where this policy for Patty really makes a lot of sense. And for anyone listening, a lot of times we just teach the infinite banking concepts, and we teach put money in the policies, move it out, solve the problem, move it back into the recycle recapture. But one of the things that I don't talk about a lot, which is what you just mentioned, is that storage. It's just the storage of your wealth. putting the money in the policy allows you to put it into a vehicle that's private, protected, and also tax-free and growth. So even if you just look at the IRR, the internal rate of return on your money in a policy, it might be 3 to 5%. So you're not going to write home about it. It's not like you're going to go, scream at the top of your lungs, look at my 3 to 5%. But when you figure out what 3 to 5% in a tax-free account is compared to putting it in a bank account that is taxed, the tax equivalent yield you'd have to get to earn 3 to 5 is probably somewhere in the 5 to 7% range. So now 5 to 7% starts to sound pretty darn good. And people that want 5 to 7 can get the same net effect in a 3 to 5% whole life return on the internal rate of return. I mean, that's the thing we don't talk about a lot. There's nothing wrong with just leaving the money in the policies and letting it grow. It's still better than just about any other guaranteed source that you can put your money into.
Amen. So Einstein said it, right? It's the eighth wonder of the world, uninterrupted compound interest. And this just happens to be better than that. Maybe he would have called it the eighth and a half wonder of the world because it's uninterrupted, tax-free
Mhm.
compound interest that you never interrupt. Even if you need the money, right? You're saving in it, like you just mentioned. You're having that guaranteed growth. It never goes backwards. It's never worse. Every day it gets better. Here's a fun little thing. Like I tell people that are wondering how the loans go. I'm like, look, we took a max loan out this December of Patty's policy. It was like 26,410 bucks. And we took that loan out, we put that money to work. That money's still growing for us. It's still getting opportunity. And we actually in our money meetings, we look at our cash value almost every week to see how much it grows. I looked at that, Chris. It's almost a month ago now on one of our meetings, and it had 3,400 new dollars, tax-free dollars in that account. And I hadn't paid anything back. I hadn't made any additional contributions, paid any additional PUAs. It just kept growing and doing the work while that 26 grand and change was out doing something for our family, for our
Yeah,
business.
I show people that all the time. I have a client, been my client for, my gosh, 20 years back when I was an advisor. And we set him up with just the normal whole life policy way back when. And now he's looking to buy a car. He watched a couple of the videos on how to get all the money back for the cars he buys. And he's like, could I use that old policy? I'm like, you bet your butt you can. But then I got into it because I hadn't seen it in a long time. And I added the guaranteed interest growth plus the dividend. And he made 5.5% on his money, and he puts his policies fully paid up. So he made 5.5%. When I told him that, he's like, dude, that's better than my investments are doing. I'm like, listen, like it just is what it is. Time value of money, and you've done very well. So now he's going to use it to finance his next car.
Yeah, it's long range thinking. It's changing our thinking from thinking in days, weeks, months, like everyone's living month to month because that's the system we're in. I had a similar, I won't tell that story right now, but I had a similar thing with a guy I ride bikes with who had a regular old whole life, had over 40,000 in cash value and paying 768 a month on a 7.5% loan to Kia. And I was like, bro, what are you doing? I've been talking to you about this stuff for 2.5 years. Do you think I'm like scamming you? I'm not even telling you to get something with me that's specially engineered for the rest of your life. Like, use that damn policy. Take a loan. First thing, call up, get the interest rate, see what it is,
Hmm.
figure out, make that same payment. And finally, Chris, after 2.5 years, he did it. And now he's using it for other things to pay off in his family because his whole family has regular old whole life that's like 5, 6 years old and it has enough cash value to do a lot of things and use the same way that we teach.
Well, I
So,
think sometimes you gotta do like the Three Stooges did. You just gotta slap somebody in the face to get them to wake up a little bit, and that sounds like what you had to do there. Like, dude, are
oh,
you
we,
stupid? Like, and that's sometimes what's got to
oh, I
happen.
do. I cuss at him. We ride. I'm like, what the f Martinez? Like, seriously, bro. Like, you think I'm trying to rip you off, telling you to take a loan from your policy to pay this off? Like, and then it worked. He goes, I did that thing, man. It,
I
it,
did that
it,
thing.
it,
I
He's
love
always
it.
showing me his crypto wallet. He's always showing me his stocks because he knows that I'm way more conservative than that in this moment. And he just likes to kind of do that. But I know that he hears me now, so I know that that's one more person I've helped without even,
Without
ever
even helping them, really, you just showed
without
them the
even
way.
helping him. Yep.
I
Yep.
love it. All right. Well, as we get to the end of this, I know there's a couple other things you did. So policy number three, and you can everybody can see like this evolution. It started with number one, the mindset and the reality of, okay, I've got a problem. I need to solve this. How do I do it? Then you actually took that step. And then now, your third policy was more for your son. So talk a little bit about Connor's policy and how this was more just to be able to have fun, I guess.
Yeah, and you were a part of this, my friend. Your Vivi Lucky Jeans, right? Watching your talk that you did, the TED Talk. And we that one, we went back to what do we like doing? Let's make sure we have a proactive approach to doing fun things together as a family. Because if you're not doing fun things, you're not enjoying life, what's the point, right? So Connor's policy was a combination of fun and future. So every year since we started his policy, to build up for his first car. Actually, we're going to be taking a loan for a computer that he's building that I'll be using here soon. We already have a plan to pay back. That's again another story, but it was a fun and future account. We've used it every year to go skiing. We use a credit card. We get the points back, cash back, and then we just take a loan and we pay it off and we pay ourselves back and refill that bucket. And that's what that one's been. It's a future account,
I
future and
love that. And then the final policy and the most current policy you did, you call it your warrior. You want to just talk a little bit about that because it's very different than the other ones we talked about.
Yeah, the fourth we'll skip over that, but that's a kind of an FU TO Sam. Like I'm not giving you another 20K for a payroll tax I wasn't expecting. So I started a policy. I paid him 120 grand. I'm like, I'll never make money on that money again. I cried, I cussed, I prayed. I remember what Nelson said, hey, there's a way. And so I started kind of a expansion of our Sipple family banking and then paid that last TO Sam bill off. Now that one hasn't been fully replenished, but hey, it put another $1 million of death benefit on my body. So that's going to be paid off in a multiplication when we get to, or it's a warehouse of wealth. But the one you just asked about is the one I'm probably proudest of because it's my oldest son, Diego, who's 23, and he was doing normal, teenage stuff, not taking real good care of himself. And I just wasn't willing to start the policy on him. I just didn't think that, hey, we'd get a great rating or he just didn't have the focus. And after a couple family retreats, after really us seeing him, that was a switch, Chris, us really seeing who he was and supporting that journey. We're proud to say that he'll be going off to basic training here as a Marine in the next month. In December of this year, we started his policy, which is an all-base policy. And I just add the $10 a month for the PUAs because I don't know what his job's going to be, as I shared before the show. And we just needed a place to store capital for him. So when he comes out, he'll have this opportunity fund to start businesses, buy his home. I asked him the other day, hey, what car would you drive? As we are behind a Mustang. He said, maybe one of those old Mustangs, those old 60 something Mustangs. I was like, cool, that'd be cool. And you could do that through your policy, and I'll keep teaching you how to do that, son. So
I love it, man. Well, it's been quite the journey. I appreciate you sharing this on solving the money problem, and I appreciate you walking through all five of your policies and the significance of each and every single one. If there's anything that you'd like to tell the audience before we leave, now's the time.
thank you, brother. I appreciate you and the time and having me on. And I would just tell the audience, when you listen to my journey, there's lots of setbacks. There's been lots of pain. There's been lots of uncertainty, but it's always been about what do we want? Where are we going? Do we have a direction? And is the thing we're doing moving us closer or further away from our direction? I tell this all the time, Chris, people don't have money problems after 4,000 plus calls talking to multimillionaires and people that can't even pay their electricity bill, right? It's a matter of having a pattern, and once you see the pattern and understand it, if you're willing to own it, you can have the same story I have or better. No problem.
Love it, man. Hey, thanks so much for your time, and thank you for every one of you who have watched this episode. And go out there, find a way to solve your money problem. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, enjoy your day.